Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, thank you for finding me. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know in the comments what you think about this video and the content on the channel. And most importantly, please, if you could subscribe because it really does help. So, what are we here to talk about today? Fallen Angels. Continuing my series of Wong Kar-wai reviews. This film was released in 1995 and it is the fifth film written and directed by Wong Kar-wai, but only the fourth film in the World of Wong Kar-wai Criterion Collection box set, which is what I'll be talking about today, which you'll see right behind me here on the shelf. Ashes of Time, which was it was the third film that he made. I think it actually came out fourth because it took so long in post-production. It came out after Chungking Express. That film is not in this set. So it goes As Tears Go By, Days of Being Wild, Chungking, and now Fallen Angels. This film stars Leon Lai, Michelle Reese, Takeshi Kaneshiro, Charlie Young, Karen Mok, and a few others. And it's a pretty sparse cast. There's a lot of kind of like background people and stuff like that, but the main characters it's pretty sparse, and that's kind of part of the point of the film. So what I'm going to do in this video, is I'm going to talk about the physical release and show off the box set for you a little bit here, and about the presentation of the film on that box set. Then I'm going to talk about the differences between this release and the Kino Blu-ray, which is something that's been a huge topic of discussion since the set was released, because this is the film thus far that has the most obvious and dramatic changes made to it. Then after I do that, I'm going to talk about the bonus features on here, and then I'm going to very briefly give you basically my impressions of this film upon revisiting it. Now, if you watch this channel, this is one of my all-time personal favorite films. I'm going to do another video in which I talk about why this film means so much to me and its personal meaning to me, and kind of solicit opinions from people out there about what films kind of do that for you as well. And then I'm going to talk about, in yet another video, so there will be altogether three videos about Fallen Angels. I'm going to talk about this film and Chungking Express together, because they were originally supposed to be one film. And then Wong Kar-wai broke them apart, and I've seen some really interesting quotes from him in interviews on these releases about how breaking them apart changed his conception of them and how he approached them as two separate films. And I'm going to get into much more detail on that. So this will not have a lot of detailed analysis of the film, though I will give you my impressions, like I said, upon revisiting. I have not watched this film since, I believe, 2014, 2015, when I watched the Kino Blu-ray. First time I saw it was on the Kino VHS, and I believe I've seen the Kino DVD, too. Because I've seen this movie maybe 5 times at this point, 6 times at this point. So to show off the box set for you here, I haven't taken everything apart so that you can kind of see how it all works. If you've missed, I've done this several times before on this video, but in the event that you've missed any of those other videos, this is a pretty big box. It's much bigger than a normal Blu-ray, which a lot of people have complained about because it really doesn't fit neatly on any shelves anywhere, but it's pretty beastly. And so it has this exterior casing that you open up in the back here, and it kind of folds out. And people have jokingly said it's like doing origami every time you want to watch a movie. I actually said that at some point too. I really thought when I saw the photographs that Criterion released of how this works that I was going to be supremely annoyed by it, but I actually really like it. And as I've said in other videos, it's become like this ritualistic thing for me where I have to like open it up to get into the movies. So this is just like the thing that came on the back and then wrapped around to the front of the outer box, which I just kept. So, and then you have the book. So a lot of people have opinions on this book. I have said before that I really like this book. I think it's very beautiful. The paper is really nice, high quality. It's got some really beautiful images in it. This is from Fallen Angels. So this is Takeshi Kaneshiro here, and this is Charlie Young here. And I'll just show you the little section in the book about this film. So as I have said before, it is not a substantial book. You are not going to have your mind blown by anything that's in here. It's really just kind of like a synopsis of the film / like almost kind of like critical blurb. Like if you used to read The New Yorker back in the day, I don't know if The New Yorker still does this, but when I was in middle school and high school, my parents would get The New Yorker, and I would read it because it would have little blurbs about all the movies that were showing in New York City. And a lot of those were movies that I was unable to access. Like I couldn't go and see in theaters and stuff like that because I couldn't get anywhere near like awesome theaters that were showing those movies. But it would have like a little paragraph that was both a synopsis of the film and kind of an assessment of it. And I would read those and be like, okay, I want to see this one. I want to see this one. And then when they would come out on VHS or DVD or whatever, I would go and find them. So here you go. So this is the section that this occupies in the book here. And now I will show you how the discs are housed in this set. I'm just going to put this right here. This is the casing for the discs. So here you have Tony Leung there on the cover, and this is Takeshi Kaneshiro here on the back, and here is the spine. And it opens up in the center, and you see this, obviously very famous, kind of In the Mood for Love. And then that opens up And we see Fallen Angels right alongside Chungking Express. So I'm going to try to hold this up for you so that you can see it. It's a little bit unwieldy. But there you go. Hopefully you kind of get what's going on there. And then it folds out additionally on both sides to reveal the earlier films and the later films. So I think that this presentation of the film looks fantastic. What I'm going to do is, I don't have the technical knowledge to really explain to you all of the differences between the Kino version and the Criterion version. It has not been re-edited. It is the same film. They've just made changes to the presentation of that film. I'm going to talk about those changes, but I think it would be better if I just show you clips so that you can see how they look different. Now, that being said, I am not going to do audio with these clips because the audio in Wong Kar-wai films, because of the music that he uses, really frequently gets blocked on YouTube. We've had some trouble with that in the past when we tried to post like footage from trailers for Wong Kar-wai films and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk over this film in particular. The music has been blocked for us before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk over these clips and you'll be able to look at them. So what I'm going to do is just kind of explain to you as you're seeing these clips what the big differences are. One of the biggest, most obvious difference is that the film's aspect ratio has been changed from a standard widescreen, which is about 1:8:5 to this super widescreen anamorphic format, which is 2.39, I think, or 2.35:1. So it's much wider. And basically the way that you would do that is you would kind of crop the top and the bottom of the image to make it a much wider and thinner image. I think that this works really well on the Criterion edition because this film has a very tremendous sense of disorientation and otherworldliness. It has super wide-angle lenses. The camera is very close to the characters. It's this very kind of disarming style that's very different from most of the stuff I would argue that you're used to seeing, and especially most of the stuff we were used to seeing in the 90s. And it has an intimacy that we can now get with digital stuff that was much harder to get back then. And so by increasing the wideness and the thinness of the image, I really think it increases that sense of otherworldliness and disorientation that I think is really important to the aesthetic of the film. That being said, I don't think the Criterion version is better than the Kino version. I think it adds to that aspect of the tone and the ambiance of the film. You'll also notice that the colors are different. When I look at it, I see that the Criterion version is richer and deeper, and the colors are more well delineated. What I mean by that is you don't see a lot of bleeding colors. All of the objects in the screen are very clearly what they are, and the colors are kind of, they stay there. And in the Kino version, I see it's a little bit more washed out, and I see a little bit of the colors kind of bleeding into one another, and there being less delineation between the hard lines of objects and stuff like that. Now, again, I don't know the technical terminology of how to talk about this. This is what I see when I look at it, and I don't think, again, that either one is better. I think the Kino one looks fantastic, and when I watch that one, I feel this nostalgia of like the first time I saw that movie, but I think that the new one is, I think it's just as good. I think it brings something new to the table, and I think it plays to the strengths of the film. I think this looks incredible. I watched it on a 59-inch television. I watched the two versions back to back, and I really saw the differences when I threw the Kino version in. And I was like, wow, this is like the movie I know and the movie I remember, but I didn't like it more. I really think that they're just kind of separate entities. So now what I'm going to do is talk to you about the bonus features. This disc has a really great amount of bonus material on it. There's 3 deleted scenes, and as with Chungking Express, each of those deleted scenes have interviews with Wong Kar-wai talking about the context of the scenes and why they, like, kind of where they fit in the film and stuff like that. There's an interview on here with Chris Doyle, and then there's a really cool thing that's about 15 minutes long where Wong Kar-wai takes questions from other filmmakers. So like Chloe Zhao, who just won the Oscar for Best Director for Nomadland, and Sofia Coppola, and Rian Johnson is in there, and there's a cinematographer, there's a novelist, there's actually 2 different novelists, and there's the Malavi sisters who directed that film with Kirsten Dunst. I saw it at New Hampshire Film Festival. I cannot for the life of me remember the name of the film, but were fashion designers who then became filmmakers. And so they submitted questions on video to Wong Kar-wai, and he answered them on video in Shanghai, actually, where he is currently filming I think he's doing an Amazon series. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about each of those kind of bonus features. And these are my notes. So I took a ton of notes on this release because there's a lot of material to remember from all of these like little interview clips and stuff like that. So the deleted scenes. One of the things that's really interesting is you actually see one of the characters in this film. You'll know if you've seen it, is the Takeshi Kaneshiro character. He lives in the Chungking Mansions Hotel, and his dad runs the hotel. And the Michelle Reese character actually also lives there too, so they kind of know each other. There's a shot of the Bridget Lin character from Chungking Express in the hotel, like kind of seen out the window in this deleted material. So you can see that there was actually originally a plan to directly connect the two films through that location. And I thought that was really interesting. And Wong Kar-wai talks in the interview talking about that. That section is predominantly more about the Takeshi Kaneshiro character. You see more scenes of him. Like, one of the things that he does in this film, if you've never seen the film, is he breaks into people's businesses at night when they're closed and he runs them. So like he like steals an ice cream truck and drives around and gives people ice cream and like stuff like that. There's more of that. You show him like breaking into more businesses and stuff. And then, if I'm understanding correctly the chronology of the film, the very last scene in the deleted section from this first kind of deleted, it's almost like a montage more than a scene, would be the end of the film chronologically. I don't think it's the end of the film, because Wong Kar-wai doesn't. If you watch this film carefully, you'll notice it's not edited in sequence, because there's locations that people have left that they're in later in the film, right? So it's this kind of disorienting sense of not being. It plays very much like it's a straight line, but if you really look at it, it's not. So I don't know where that sequence would have landed had Wong Kar-wai edited it into the film, but chronologically, I think it's the end of the film. So that's kind of interesting to see, like a different, like bit of a coda kind of that could have been on there. One of the things that's really interesting about the character who plays Takeshi Kaneshiro's dad, which is talked about at length in these deleted scenes, because you see some deleted sections of him and Takeshi Kaneshiro, like, their bond as father and son and stuff like that. He's the guy who actually ran the Chungking Mansions Hotel, and Wong Kar-wai cast him in the film. He's really funny. He talks about like meeting Wong Kar-wai and stuff like that. And he says he doesn't understand the movie at all. He's seen it twice. He saw the premiere, and then he bought the VHS just to have it. And he just like, I don't know what this movie's about. It's pretty funny. But he and Takeshi Kaneshiro both speak the Minnan dialect, which is a dialect from Taiwan. And so, because the guy is from Taiwan, Takeshi Kaneshiro, I think he either grew up in Taiwan or one of his parents is Taiwanese, the other one is Japanese. And so they would speak together in this dialect, and they got along together really well, and they had this really strong bond, and you can see that on the film, and that's really interesting. He talks about Takeshi Kaneshiro's acting style too, and how because the guy had never acted before in his life, and there's a scene where he has to like slap him, and he didn't want to hurt him, and Takeshi was kind of like, no, it's okay, just like slap the crap out of me, it's fine, it's like how I like to do it. So it's a really interesting little insight, and you actually see one of the things that's really, really cool about that section of the deleted scenes is they left in a little bit of footage after they called cut of the motorcycle scenes. There's this famous motorcycle driving scenes in this film. So you see Takeshi Kaneshiro like on the rig that's carrying the motorcycle and the camera on it and stuff. It's really kind of cool. It's like this tiny little snippet that they leave in at the end of one of the scenes. So altogether, there's 16 minutes of deleted scenes. So there's a fair amount of stuff in there. And Wong Kar-wai, in that section, he talks about the very first shot that they filmed is the shot of Michelle Reese at the end where she's in like a restaurant, and in the background the Takeshi Kaneshiro character gets in a fight with these people. And he said that on that day that they shot that, they discovered the style of the film. They were in this tiny location. They had to use super wide lenses. And there's an interview with Christopher Doyle in here, like I said, and Christopher Doyle talks in his interview about how the lenses were so wide and the spaces were so small that he was really, really close to the actors when they shot the film. And because he was so close to the actors, they couldn't use traditional lighting because you would see the shadow of the camera on their faces. So he describes the visuals film and the style as very kind of ad hoc, and like we had to make it up as we were doing it. But, as Wong Kar-wai says, they decided very early on that they really loved that super wide angle lens, super close to the actor kind of thing. So to transition straight from that to Chris Doyle's interview, he's very candid in his interview, and it's really interesting. He talks about the intimacy that he had with the actors on this film because he had to be so close to them, and there's some very sexual scenes in this film, and he was like right up there against them, and he had to have like a rapport with them, and Wong Kar-wai actually says in the scene where in the bonus feature, it's funny how all this stuff ties together. In the bonus feature where people submitted questions to him, he says that he plays music on the sets of his films to create a rhythm for the actors so that when they start filming, there is a dance between the actor and the camera. And that's kind of what Chris Doyle is talking about in different language of his intimacy with the actors, and his assistant camera had to stand behind him because there was no room for them to stand next to them because it was so wide. And I think that those super wide angle lenses have this really tremendous sense of intimacy where there are scenes where you really feel like you are the camera and you are complicit in the actions of the characters, and it becomes like an experience as much as it is a film. So it's really interesting to hear Chris Doyle talk about that. He talks about Wong Kar-wai very candidly too. It's really interesting. He jokes about like WKW the brand versus Wong Kar-wai the character, and he's like, he's so tall it's hard to talk to him, and you can't talk down to him because he's always above you and stuff like that. He talks about how Wong Kar-wai's like mantra that he would always say to people after a take was, "Is that all you can do?" So he would say to Christopher Doyle, like, "Chris, is that all you can do?" But he didn't mean it in a mean way. He meant it to challenge him. And Chris Doyle says that he actually kind of carried that with him as he went forward in his career and would always hear that voice in his head challenging him. And he said some stuff about Wong Kar-wai, and because they don't work together anymore. So you can find some quotes about Christopher Doyle about Wong Kar-wai that are not like I've never seen him be mean about him, but he's not always like super complimentary about him. But you can see that he has tremendous respect for him in this interview, and he says stuff like, it's because of him that we all are who we are. He talks about everyone who worked on these films, and Wong Kar-wai actually says in the deleted scenes that he felt that after working on Chungking and this movie, and they had a lot of the same people on Days of Being Wild and Ashes of Time, and making all these films together, he said they became like a circus troupe. And they were so close, and they could like fit each other's thoughts, and it was like really like this camaraderie and this sense of everyone wanting to make the film and wanting to be there, and not just about it being a job and it being like this art that they cared so much about. And Chris Doyle says that Wong Kar-wai is the one who brought them there, and he was the leader, and he was the one with the vision. He was also the one at the end of the day who had to take responsibility for it, because there's actually this pretty funny quote where he's like, "We had the time of our lives and we were able to collaborate and create all this great art, but if it sucks, he's got to take the blame for it, because he's the producer, he's the director, he's the writer, like he's the one who has to go out there in the world and present this film to people, who has to answer to the financiers and stuff like that." So it's an interesting perception and perspective on that. But he also talks about color theory, Christopher Doyle, and how they wanted to make a very emotional and intuitive film where they were filming things on the day that were a response to how they were feeling about the material, and the colors would come to them as they were making the film, and it was less of he talks about Western color theory and how it's very cerebral and deliberate, and how this was much more intuitive and emotional. And he would collaborate really closely with the costume designer and the set designer. The set designer and the costume designer, Christopher Doyle, will collaborate with them in terms of the colors and like how they were shooting things and what they would look like in the camera and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting insight into working on the set of the film and what that was like on the day. So the little bonus feature here where people submitted questions to Wong Kar-wai is very interesting. Sofia Coppola actually kind of asks him about how he got into filmmaking and what he was into as a kid, and he talks about how he grew up in Shanghai. He lived there until he was 5, I should say. He didn't grow up there. He was born in Shanghai, lived there until he was 5, and then his parents moved to Hong Kong, and his mom really liked going to the movies, and they didn't speak Cantonese at that point. They were still learning it, so he and his mom would go to the movies, and they would have like a couple hours where they could just turn their brains off and not have to think about the fact that they were outsiders in this city, and they could just enjoy these films. And he fell in love with these movies and the way that they transported you to different places, and you could enter all these different worlds, like the criminal world, and they show stills from Hitchcock films, so I'm assuming those are the types of movies that he was seeing when he was a kid and stuff like that. And they would see movies from all over the world, so there would be Hong Kong films, and there would be American films, and all Japanese films and all this stuff. And as it was really interesting to have his insight into that. And he talks about how one of the people asks him how he originates an idea. Where do his ideas come from? And he talks about how, like, for instance, with Chungking Express, his dad used to work in this place where there were all these immigrants from India and Pakistan. And so that kind of sparked the idea for the Bridget Lin, Takeshi Kaneshiro section in Chungking Express. 2046 came from the promise that the Chinese government made that Hong Kong would remain untouched for 50 years after the handover, so 1997 to 2046. And that movie went through many variations over time, and eventually he landed on what it became. But the idea of the title and the idea of making a film about that and about the future and stuff like that came from that notion. I'm just going to look at my notes here because I don't want to forget anything if there's anything really interesting that people asked him. Oh yeah, so someone asked him about the balance in his films between people being very reserved and private and afraid of showing bold kind of naked emotions, and the side of him that's very sexual and violent and like exploding with these things on the screen. And he talked about how he hopes that what his films do is try to achieve a balance between those two spaces. So I thought that was really interesting. And there's a lot of other stuff in there. Go and check it out. I don't need to. I'm not going to go through and tell you every single thing that's in there. So that's the DVD, or the Blu-ray rather, excuse me, and the bonus features. Now I'm going to just give you very briefly kind of my impressions upon revisiting, because like I said, I'm going to talk about this in more detail in another video. This is a very unique film, even in Wong Kar-wai's filmography, and it's a very strange and surreal and otherworldly film that is almost like sci-fi. And you know, you get these films where you have like obviously the Kubrick one, 2001, and then you have Solaris by Tarkovsky, and then there are more modern films like there's Sunshine by Danny Boyle. But these space movies, and there's Moon, obviously, which is like a cult classic, they have this sense of like emptiness and loneliness and being so far away from society and like the teeming masses and things like that. And the way that Wong Kar-wai, and Chris Doyle shoot this film at night in Hong Kong with empty streets, it really feels like it's this other planet. And there's this really surreal kind of drifting, floating, detached quality to this film that now that I've watched this in the context of watching his other films and all these other Hong Kong films, like in this big burst of, you know, doing this channel and stuff, I realize how unique this movie is and how odd it is, but in a really good way. It succeeds extremely well at being very unique. It's a really violent movie. It's a really sexual movie, which is interesting because the otherworldliness of it is so powerful that that's the mood that you get into. But it's actually, I think, other than maybe As Tears Go By, his most violent movie, and other than maybe 2046, the most explicitly sexual one. And I haven't seen his section in Eros, I do have to say. I've never seen that movie. But it's this really interesting mixture of all of these things, of these characters living in extreme isolation and being unable to find human connection, but then also exploding in like sex and violence and stuff like that. And it's just such a strange movie, but like in the best way possible. It like hypnotizes you and pulls you in, and you can't get away from it, almost like a tractor beam kind of thing, right? So again, I'm going to talk a lot more about my impressions of this film and kind of analyze it a little more deeply in a different video. This is really just more of a Blu-ray review. It's the World of Wong Kar-wai Criterion Collection release. The disc specifically about Fallen Angels, released in 1995. One of my favorite movies ever, as I've said before, and I'll say it again. My name is Will. This is Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. I thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.